Welcome back to the Rules Plus podcast. In the last episode, I highlighted two interesting takeaways from a presentation on officiating philosophies at the Tasso football annual meeting in Dallas. Takeaway one was about contrasts in NCAA and Tasso protocols rooted in the presence and absence, respectively, of replay. And takeaway two was about the differences in the criteria for ruling flagrant versus non-flagrant targeting in Texas high school football. For this episode, I'm returning to what I have been calling the Siblings Project, an ongoing consideration of 15 pairs of rules concepts that I've characterized as siblings separated at birth that are, nevertheless, engaged with each other. Many of the best officials I know find that comparing parallel pairs of rules helps them remember what to do in situations that stray from routine. For example, in comparing 2 weeks ago what kickers and passers can do, we found that while kickers can punt the ball more than once, passers may not pass the ball more than once. So today, let's consider the second of the 15 rule siblings I'll be talking about intermittently in this series, namely, comparing the consequences of throwing an illegal forward pass versus committing intentional grounding. In the discussion of the kickers versus passers dyad 2 episodes ago, I noted that Rule 7 has little to say about what a legal forward pass is, instead focusing on what a legal forward pass is not. There are 3 requirements in 731 for a legal forward pass. 1, it must be by Team A. 2, it may be done only once. And 3, it must be done from behind the neutral zone. There are then 8 scenarios listed in 732 where a forward pass is illegal. 1, it is thrown by a Team A player whose entire body is beyond the neutral zone when the ball is released. 2, it is thrown by a Team B player. 3, it is thrown after team possession is changed. 4, it is the second one during a down. 5, it is thrown from in or behind the neutral zone after a ball carrier's entire body and the ball have been beyond the neutral zone. 6, to conserve time, it is thrown directly to the ground after the ball has touched the ground or not thrown immediately after the ball has been controlled. 7, to conserve time, it is thrown into an area where there is no eligible Team A receiver. And 8, to conserve yardage, it is thrown into an area where there is no eligible Team A receiver. Of course, as is well known by even casual fans, there is a major exception to Scenario 8. If the passer is or has been outside the tackle box, he may throw the ball away as long as it lands on or beyond the neutral zone or the neutral zone extended. Perhaps less well known by casual fans is that only the player who receives and controls the snap enjoys this privilege until he relinquishes possession to another player. Don't overlook the carefully crafted final phrase in the exception. The verb used is relinquish rather than lose possession, a distinction that indicates that a player intentionally lets go of or releases the ball. Furthermore, possession must actually transfer from the player who receives the snap to another player. This means that if the ball becomes loose when the player who receives the snap is unsuccessful in an attempt to pitch or to hand the ball to a teammate, the player may recover the ball and still enjoy the privilege of throwing it away. And don't overlook as well the provisions in Section 19 of Rule 2, where you'll find several important definitions of passing, of forward pass and backwards pass, of crosses the neutral zone, and of catchable forward pass. I won't discuss these definitions now, but that may be a fruitful discussion to have in a future episode. Instead, let's now get to the central topic for today. What are the similarities and differences between an illegal forward pass and intentional grounding? To begin with, did you hear any references in 731 or 732 to the phrase intentional grounding? Huh, I didn't either. Is there a definition in Rule 2 of intentional grounding? No, nothing there either. In fact, the phrase intentional grounding does not appear anywhere in the playing rules 1 through 10. You can confirm this for yourself by doing a text search in a PDF copy of the rules book. If you do such a search, as I obviously have, you'll discover that the phrase appears 14 times. In Rule 12.3.2f concerning instant replay, in the official title for Signal 36, twice in Section 7 of the new Compendium of Officiating Standards, and 10 times in the approved rulings. So clearly, we know that intentional grounding exists, and the rules book acknowledges that it exists, even if the concept is nowhere defined explicitly in the playing rules. It turns out that intentional grounding is simply a subset of the set of things that are illegal forward passes. The only way that we know this is that there are separate penalties in 732 for scenarios 1 through 5 and then for scenarios 6 through 8. Somehow, I guess, we just know that stuff in scenarios 6 to 8 constitute, quote, intentional grounding, end quote. Like the horse with no name, intentional grounding would be the fowl with no name, if Appendix G and official signal number 36 did not come to the rescue. Appendix G comprises a very handy summary of penalties organized largely by yardage value, with references for the official signal to use and the relevant rules citation. Among the loss of down penalties in the Appendix G is the pair of fouls, illegal forward pass by Team A, and intentionally grounding forward pass, each with a generic citation of Rule 732, but each with a separate reference to an official signal. Signal number 35 is specified as an illegal pass, while signal number 36 is specified as intentional grounding. If you're not sure what signals those are, check out the signal compendium in the rules book. But the generic reference to 732 means there is no explicit indication of which of the 8 scenarios should be referred to as an illegal pass as opposed to intentional grounding. The one explicit hint is in the Appendix G listings of the 2 fouls, which include the respective enforcements for illegal pass, a bracketed observation notes, also loss of 5 yards, and for intentional grounding, a bracketed observation notes, spot of foul. All this is a roundabout way of noting the signature similarity between an illegal forward pass and intentional grounding. Both fouls are illegal passes. Both fouls include a loss of down when not in conflict with other rules. Both fouls include an option for a 10-second runoff. You can check 344A 2 and 3 for that. The signature difference between the sibling infractions is that an illegal pass is always penalized 5 yards, while intentional grounding never includes a yardage component. This curious rule's eccentricity That a subset of a set of illegal actions requires, nevertheless, different treatment poses a real danger for officials. When do we simply assess a loss of down at the spot versus assessing 5 yards from the spot of the foul as well as the loss of down? It's easier than you might think to become confused about enforcement in the heat of the moment. Since this is Rules Plus, I'm going to dare to bring up an additional difference that existed in the distant past that thankfully has been eliminated for many years now. There used to be different penalties for intentional grounding to save time versus intentional grounding to save yardage. Curiously, if you grounded the ball to save time, the 5 yard penalty was included. If you grounded to save yardage, there was no yardage penalty. That never made sense to me. That was the opposite of what you'd think it should be. I bring this up not just because it's such a curious historical rules quirk, but to illustrate a singular danger for long tenured officials such as I am. I find on occasion that in the heat of the moment, my head will latch on to some long tenured rule that has long since gone away. That's why I rely on my crew to set me straight if I ever have such a senior moment. I hope you'll do the same favor for the referee of your crew if you get a disquieting feeling about something he's about to do. A current example of rules deja vu for me is the recent return of the loss of down provision for an intentional illegal touching of a pass by an ineligible Team A player. That's in 7.3.11. For years, I've had to remind myself the loss of down went away. Yet, now it's back. I think I'm getting too old for this when a rule provision goes full circle like it has here. Anyway, please do not be confused by my mention of the former difference between grounding to save time and grounding to save yardage. Forget I ever said anything about this. Well, that's it for the sibling fouls of illegal forward pass and intentional grounding. I'm not sure why the penalty difference exists, but I can speculate that the Rules Committee wanted to align the intentional grounding rule to embrace the same philosophy as the rules for illegal use of hands, holding, illegal blocks, and personal fouls that occur behind the neutral zone. You can check those out in 10.22b, which are penalized from the previous spot instead of from the basic spot. The committee doesn't want to pile on a drive-killing, unreasonable yardage penalty against Team A by assessing additional negative yards from the spot of such fouls. This provision, by the way, is an excellent illustration of why we should avoid employing the old-timers' lazy, shortcut mnemonic to penalize them how it hurts them the most. That is not always true. Next week's episode will be the first one after we resume our live Rules Plus study sessions before our regular AFOA meetings. Once our live sessions have started, I anticipate that the in-season episodes of the Rules Plus podcast will feature 2 segments every week. An ad hoc segment to review interesting or puzzling topics, plays, or situations we talk about on Monday nights, and an ongoing segment to continue a regular program, such as the current Siblings Project to consider all 15 pairs of sibling rules separated at birth. So for next week's episode, I may have interesting stuff to share from our Rules Plus session. And for sure, I'll focus on the similarities and differences of the sibling rules for free kicks versus scrimmage kicks. If you're not an AFOA member, time is running out for you to consider joining us. Our training for new members has now been going on for several weeks, and high school scrimmages will be starting in another week. So don't delay if you're interested in joining AFOA. Email us at recruiting@afoa.ws, visit our website at www.austinfootballofficials.org, or call us at 512-298-2987. Till next time, have a great week.